Okay, it looks like we are live on YouTube. Lord, I don't even know how to get back to where I was at. Let me grab the link. How do you do this, Chanel? Let me talk to myself. Okay, it looks like we are live on YouTube.
Would I be able to?
Lord, I don't even know how to get back to where I was at. Let me grab the link. How do you do this, Chanel? Let me talk to my. Okay, I had to put my, what do you call that? My speaker on mute over here. Well, here's the chat. Here's the link, everybody. Please send that out wherever you are. Take the flyer and send it. Oh, hey, I could send a flyer from here. I'm tripping. Shantae, if you have that flyer, we can do that. I'm still answering messages from the page. I'm gonna turn my camera off. I'll be here as tech support. And then you all can begin when we get ready. Want to make sure we send that link out to folks so people can join us. And I guess we can get ready at 3:10. Okay. If someone has the agenda, go ahead and just drop that in the chat so everybody knows how to follow, and remember to introduce yourselves. WHAS is joining us. Need to share that link. Okay, if you guys want to begin.
Who's giving the intro? Brother McLeod, while we're here, you gonna start it off?
Shantae or M?
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
What was that?
What?
Who are you talking to over?
As the screen sharing is disabled.
You need to be added as a co-host.
Okay, yes, give me a second so I can get that set.
All right.
But please go ahead and introduce the event.
Hold on. All right. All right, so everybody ready? Good. Okay. My computer's running slow. All right, so we are on in nationwide. The National Day of Resistance is happening in several cities and states across the country. And initially, we were going to meet at Van Hoos at the Board of Education here in Louisville, Kentucky, in Jefferson County Board of Education, but there was some questionable weather forecasts, so we had to make this a virtual thing. But still, the same information will get out. And for those that are not aware, the National Day of Resistance is basically a day that Demand Safe Schools have coordinated for educators, parents, students, and other community members to come together to be on the front lines as we fight for racial justice in the community and racial justice in the U.S. public school system as well. We are all joining forces to demand equity and safe conditions before our schools are reopened. As the fight against systemic racism and state-sanctioned violence has reached historic heights, on the heels of disparate impact of COVID-19 on Black, Brown, and Indigenous families, organizers and union leaders, they are all coming together with a comprehensive set of demands that the safety of students and school staff is guaranteed before school doors are opened. You can see on the flyer, the graphic that has been going out, not only do we want safe schools, we want healthy schools, we want equitable schools, and we have 8 demands that we are pushing. And those 8 demands listed on the graphic, we want no in-person schooling until the scientific and public health data supports it. We want police-free schools. We demand all schools must be supported to function as community schools with adequate numbers of counselors and nurses. We demand safe conditions that includes lower class sizes, PPE, cleaning, testing, and other key protocols as it relates to the safety of COVID-19. We want equitable access to online learning, especially seeing that districts across the country are being forced to do non-traditional learning and other virtual learning platforms. Everyone needs to be able to assess those in their homes if that's the only option that they are provided. We need support for our communities and families. At a time in a global pandemic, a lot of people have been directly impacted with evictions and financial disparities. So we demand support for the communities and families. That includes a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, direct cash assistance to those that are unable to work, and other critical social needs. We also demand a moratorium on new charter or voucher programs, which is something that we have been fighting before the global pandemic, before we were forced into NTI. That's something that we are continuing to push for. We demand a massive infusion of federal money to support the reopening, funded by taxing the billionaires and Wall Street. We have a lot of different teachers unions. The American Federation of Teachers have endorsed this movement. We also have the Chicago Teachers Union, the Boston Teachers Union, the United Teachers in Los Angeles, the organization Journey for Justice, the Center for Popular Democracy, the St. Paul Federation of Educators, the Midwest Academy, the Milwaukee Teachers Education Association, National Educators United, the Racine Educators United, Little Rock Education Association, and Oakland Education Association, as well as more that you can find on demandsafeschools.org to see who else has endorsed the National Day of Resistance. I'm going to show you all, here's a quick intro video.
What we want to do is we want to get our schools open. We want to get them open quickly, beautifully in the fall. All right, so as we saw in that brief intro video, there are a lot of things that students, communities, educators, and parents are being faced with in regards to not only things happening in the communities, but with what we're being faced with this upcoming school year. So if you could make sure you're using the hashtag that's listed on this graphic, hashtag demand safe schools, hashtag #EdEquity or else, and hashtag police free schools. And those are just a few of our demands. So we have some speakers that we are so happy to have join us today that can share some more insight on why we're pushing for those demands. And I will go ahead and turn that over to them after we do a brief overview of the National Day of Resistance. Again, the hashtags that we have pushed out are in regards to the thousands of parents, students, and educators that have been on the front lines fighting for racial justice in their communities and in our schools. So as we know, a movement consists of a lot of moving parts, and within the movement, there's a lot of movement moments. This movement moment consists of our organizations coming together to unite the stakeholders in education to advance a racial justice agenda in public education. We're working to galvanize a strong and growing student, educator, parent, community voice. And this is, only the beginning of gathering a lot of those organizations to come together for these common good demands. Again, some of those organizations that are involved or that endorse the movement moment can also be found at demandsafeschools.org. I'm sorry, the screen sharing. All right, so I'm going to leave the demands up on the screen, and I will turn it over to some of our speakers that have joined us to speak on some of the demands that we've set out. Sorry. Kumar, would you like to?
Love to. Love to. All right. Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Kumar Rashad. I'm and hi Shantae. Hi everybody. I'm a high school teacher here in Louisville, Kentucky, with Breckenridge Metropolitan High School. Been an educator for about 20 years, and I'm surprised that well, not all the way, but I'm sort of surprised that I didn't see the National Education Association on the list, because they had a list of demands that's almost really similar. But hey. Anyways, I'm here, so that's all that matters. And the pieces that I'm talking about with this, I want to talk about 7 and 8. First of all, talk about the moratorium on new charter or voucher programs and standardized testing. The NAACP back in 2016 started this moratorium on charter schools because they had some insight. They had some insight into the mismanagement that charter schools nationally have done. And they had insight that they didn't want to see privatizers exploit Black and brown kids for profit, because they got corporations, not educators, running schools in most of these charter schools. You got a couple of good pop-up ones for Black males. I know one in Chicago, one in New York, one in New Orleans, but on the whole, they don't all operate that way. There's a lot of mismanagement. According to Julian Vasquez, Dr. Julian Vasquez, excuse me, he's the Dean of Education at UK, and also one of the finalists for the Kentucky Department of Education's commissioner job. He didn't get it. They gave it to somebody named Jason Glass from Colorado. But this guy has a website called cloakinginequity.com, where it's a blog on social justice. And he states that nearly 40% of state open charter schools have either failed to open or have closed soon after opening. So that's almost 50%, 40%. So you look at JCPS, we have 150 schools. Mathematically, that means 60 schools shut down or won't open, 60 schools out of our schools. That's a terrible thing. We just had a battle in JCPS a couple of years ago about I believe it was a elementary school that shut down. And because we know that schools are the cornerstone of our community, that they're building blocks. So when the school shuts down, kids are shuffled all around the city. It's almost like losing your home when you lose a school. So that's the same as us losing 60 of them in this. And 60 of the schools are going to be in what neighborhoods? Neighborhoods of people that look like me. It's not going to be in the neighborhoods of the affluent or the wealthy. But the NAACP didn't put that about the 40% that state open, that the schools closed. But they did mark 4 things that they wanted to see done before we even had charter schools. Number 1, they said we need to have the charter schools have to have the same transparency and accountability standards as public schools. Now, I'm all for the same transparency. If I got to open my books, you got to open your books. You got to be accountable just like I'm accountable. But at the same time, I do have to have a caveat and say that I do not like and never have liked the accountability standards of public schools. So we have a prime opportunity right now to change all of that, get it all right. And it costs a lot of money. You can't just give us the same amount of money that we've been given for years and years and expect us to do a whole system revamp. So 2, we need that public funds can't be diverted to charter schools at the expense of the public education system. I said again, we were already running off being underfunded, and now we got to worry about charter schools being sabotaging our money, using our public dollars and giving it to private institutions. It's not fair. And because number 3 on their list is, charter schools have to cease expelling students that public schools have a duty to educate. Charter schools don't have to take you if you ECE, you got a learning disability, you got trauma, you got financial problems, they could just reject you. And part of number 4, that leads into number 4. Number 4 is charter schools have to cease to perpetuate a de facto segregation of the highest performing children from those whose aspirations may be high, but whose talents are not yet as obvious. All that means is charter schools have a right to cherry pick the brightest students who are already going to do the best that they can, and no matter what school they're going to, these kids are going to thrive. They have that option to pick those, but they don't normally take the student who needs to be invested in, someone that you have to bring the education out of and then discover that genius within that child. They're not going to do that. So that's the funny thing about this whole charter school system. They have all the advantages. They get to cherry pick the best kids. They're way more funded than public schools, but guess what? On a national level, they're not performing higher. So they're not performing higher. It doesn't make sense. You got more money, you got all this other stuff, you're cherry picking kids. No, that's the same thing as if, I don't know if anybody plays basketball, but if you want like the basketball, I'm originally from Cleveland, so I'm gonna like the Cleveland Cavaliers, even without LeBron. Now, this is the same thing as saying, what if the Cleveland Cavaliers right now play the Lakers where LeBron is at right now and beat the Lakers by like 1 or 2 points? Like, that should never happen. That's how charter schools are doing compared to public schools. Matter of fact, in April of this year, Texas State Education said the state's woefully, they used the word woefully, I never said that word, woefully, underfunded public schools, they woefully underfunded public schools outperform the well-funded, overhyped charter schools. So then Texas, the real puzzle in Texas and elsewhere is why billionaires and financiers continue to fund failure. That's exactly what they're doing. They're funding failure. And we said that, charter schools take money out of the community. We need to have this money in the community. We have to have better schools, more resources. People asking, schools aren't going to open up right now. What do we need that money for? We need money to reopen up a whole new system. We need money to make sure we have equity for all kids. But then we got to talk about that money. Where are we getting that money from a local and a federal level? That brings me to the 8th point. Massive infusion of federal money to support the reopening funding by taxing billionaires in Wall Street. Before I go to billionaires, I want to start a little bit local right here. And I'm being local right here. We have a tea party here that's coming from Anchorage, Kentucky, and they're coming to Louisville. And every time they keep saying that what we need to do, they're going against JCPS's property estate tax increase. Now, let's understand that a state tax increase charges a certain amount of money for people who own property. So we're not really talking about your mostly your poor people, because poor people don't normally own property. So we're taxing those who really have it. And I, as a homeowner, am anxious to pay a higher tax to fund education. Louisville, Kentucky, Jefferson County, JCPS, we charge on the state tax, we charge 72 cents per every $100. 72 cents per every $100. You go to Anchorage, and they pay 98 cents per per every $100, 26 more than Louisville, but yet don't even have a tenth of our population. You know, they value education in Anchorage. They're okay about raising taxes to fund their mostly affluent and white population. You know, make that plain and simple. Their leader is a woman named Teresa Comoriano, who's, you know, not only a liar because she's been on TV saying that JCPS is trying to raise our taxes by 9% when we're only trying to raise it by 6%, even though we should be pushing for 25%, 25 cents. But we're 72 cents per every dollar, and we're trying to go up to just 6 cents per dollar. 6 cents per dollar. So she puts on it, we're trying to go 9 cents, which we were trying to go 9 cents, but we're only going 6 cents. But as we were dealing with her in the parking lot of the fairgrounds during the election, she ran up with the sign, a lying sign, tried to hit my wife with the sign. My wife smacked the sign out of her hand. Another guy who was about probably $1, weighed $1, grabbed my wife by the arm. An older guy, man. You know, if I breathed on him, he would have broke that. So, you know, there was no immediate threat. But out of principle, he had to get a whole lot of choice words. So did the 4 sheriffs who stood around and did nothing about it. So in the event, we had to chase them out. And that's the problem, is that when people have money and people have influence, they're okay with them having it as long as you don't. That's the same thing with these billionaires. It's okay for us to become taxed, but it's not okay for them to share the same demands that we have as far as taxes. NEA, the National Education Association, estimates that $175 billion is going to be needed in public education to equip our locations and provide resources needed to have safety in this era of COVID. $175 billion. Normally, the government really gives about somewhere between 70 billion, somewhere around there. About 70 billion is what the government usually does every year to public education, funding every K through 12 school across the country. All right. Now, where NEA says it needs 175 billion, but the Republicans right now wanted to sign a bill that only marked like this as 70 billion, just 70 billion across every school in the country. But if you choose not to go back to school in person, you're only eligible to get 1/3 of that, a piece of 1/3, not the whole 1/3, a piece of 1/3 of that. So you're going to operate on 1/3 of the budget that you normally had if you send your school, your children, your babies to school to get all these diseases. So Trump is really trying to punish those schools who don't open right there. And that's just the way he's doing it, trying to take taxes from us. But you got to think about, I was reading a brother named Scott Segrad. He's the vice president of K-12 Education Policy at Liberal Learning Center for American Progress. Anyway, this group studies is a national group, and what they do is they study system inequities all across, judicial, educational, all across the board. And they even said that the NEA estimate was modest. They said that actually schools should have they should be pumping $200 billion into the school system to revamp everything. And what I mean by everything is this. Number one, we have to apply an explicit race equity lens to policy development. Race equity has got to be at the forefront of all schools and professions. 2, we have to prepare all students for college and the workforce. We're saying that we're failing right now. People don't have the same access. 3, we need money to modernize our buildings and elevate the teaching profession in the whole. Because if we're going to be sending our kids to person at any point in the future, we're going to have a complete restructuring of that building that makes it safe. Like someone else is going to talk about it as far as the safety numbers and research is what we're talking about. Number 4, we have to dramatically increase investment in public schools and improve the equity of existing investments. Invest more, bring a balanced approach to charter school policies, because we got to understand we need this money, and the money is out there. You know, you got billionaires like Warren Buffett who pays less taxes than his secretary. One of the richest men in the world pays less taxes than his secretary, who makes a lot less than he does. Right here in Louisville, Churchill Downs, people like us are paying more taxes than Churchill Downs. I think that community that surrounds Churchill Downs could use a lot of that tax money. Yeah, it's real broke down in that area. And I used to live right there off of Central. And I know that in the area needs a lot of money, needs to be built up. Walmart doesn't pay any taxes. These governments and the cities, they be cutting off, they give you a deal. If you employ a certain amount of people, you don't have to pay these taxes. So now Walmart doesn't pay taxes, number one, so they saving money there, but that money that they saving should be going to their employees. But it doesn't go to their employees because the employees make a wage that a lot of them still are on welfare getting food stamps. That means people like me and you are paying Walmart's employees. Why are me and you paying Walmart's employees when the Waltons are one of the richest families in the world? They could pay their own employees and give back to the community. We got to demand that. In 2018, according to Louisville Future, the Kentucky General Assembly proposed a regressive sales tax. Now, understand, a sales tax is a tax against poor people, because poor people got to buy things like, you got to buy food, clothes, things that you actually got to go into a store and buy. And if you pay a higher tax, you got to pay more money. So it affects poor people more when we need to be doing an estate tax. But this regressive sales tax that the Kentucky General Assembly did benefited the richest 5% of Kentucky. Especially the 1%, the top 1% received over $5,000 in tax cuts, but everybody else's taxes increased. So the richest people got lower taxes, but every one of us, our taxes, we got to pay more money for our taxes. The poorest 20% of Kentucky who make just $10,000 a year end up chipping in more of their income in taxes than do millionaires. Again, from Louisville Future. This breeds crime. This breeds contempt in our society. And look at the number of murders in Louisville. You can see how that's really affecting us. But what we need to do is look at organizations. This thing comes from America for taxfairness.org. First thing, rich people, like millionaires, pay about 24% of their taxes after loopholes, 24%. That's what middle class people would pay, somewhere around there. Warren Buffett, the same billionaire who pays less taxes than the secretary, proposes that we raise that 24% to 30%, which would generate $72 billion over 10 years. Americans for taxfairness.org, if you want to check my stats. Americans for taxfairness.org. Now, talking about Wall Street. Wall Street's a criminal and a crook too. They got wealthy people. They pay about 24% of their capital gains tax rate. Now, understand that they're paying a rate. They're saying, Wall Street, what they do is they're selling stocks. So they say, because I'm selling stocks for somebody else, I shouldn't get taxed on the money that I'm receiving, and the law supports them. So the money that Wall Street brokers get, they're taxed the 24% rate, which is improper, and they should be taxed the same tax that you and I are taxed for your payroll salaries, which is way higher than 24%. If they did this is a loophole that could close, they would gain $17 billion in 10 years. One more thing we got, and I'm gonna pass on. One more thing, we got a tax call for self-employed people who use something called an S corporation loophole. Now, these people say because they work for themselves that they don't have to pay payroll taxes. This is a loophole that they have. But then you got people like Newt Gingrich and John Edwards who use this to avoid paying taxes, rich people. If they close this loophole, that would create $25 billion in a 10-year process. So we've got to tax these billionaires. They can afford it, and they've been avoiding it for too long. They quickly will tell you, well, we pay more than everybody else in the country if you look at the actual numbers and look at actual dollars, but you're not supposed to be looking at actual dollars. You're supposed to be looking at percentage. All right, because percentage is how you affect people. Now, if I'm paying $50 and I make $100, I'm paying 50 cents. If you pay $100 and you making $1,000, you're only making 10%. That $50 hurts me way more than that $100 hurts you. And that's why we talk about equity and fairness. We got to do a better job of taxing the rich and keeping our babies safe. And that's where I'm at with it.
No, what do you really have to say? I'm just playing.
Right.
Thank you, Kumar. I have always, it's always been a pleasure to, be able to have these conversations with you. And my head is swarming with numbers, after you definitely did your research on that, you almost had me ready to pull my sign back out and head back down to the state capitol because, we've had this battle, not with just this district, but, across the country. And we should not have to continue to go back to our capitals and to go to our Board of Educations to tell them to stop putting profits over people, stop putting profits over children. We should not have to continue to do that. And especially as it pertains to our Black and brown babies, they're always the ones that end up suffering the most. So thank you for, bringing out all the statistics and everything, because, that's something that it needs to be heard. It needs to be continuously amplified of how much money, when you say billions, you don't talk about thousands, you're not talking about millions, you're not talking about 100,000, you're talking about billions of dollars, that can be reallocated to education. So thank you.
Ma'am. Vote in November again for that estate tax raise, and to contact your Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul and push them to do more as far as getting money for education. So that's my last thing. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll just go through some of the, to piggyback off of what some of the comments have said as you were speaking. We have corporations and not educators running charter schools. Thank you for bringing that to light. We need to make sure we have money for equity for all students, all kids. One thing we do know, like you said, charter schools, they can pick and choose who they will, allow admission into their schools. They can pick and choose, if they want to take, special education students that have the most needs. They can pick and choose if they want, poverty-stricken Black and brown babies in their schools or not. So when we talk about equity for all kids, those are some of the things we're discussing. A parent and a teacher also said that she would be happy to pay more taxes if she knew that it went to bettering her son's life. And I think the majority of us can agree, on that. But it shouldn't fall on the backs of the people, we all benefit from an educated public. Someone brought up that as soon as kids went back to Indiana, on day one, there were positive COVID test results among students. And we'll touch bases more on why we are refusing to return to school unless the scientific data supports a safe reopening. So thank you. I'm gonna put the demands back on the screen and open the floor up for our next speaker.
I'll go briefly. My name is M. I am one of the core organizers for the BLM Louisville education team. And folks may not know, but 2 districts were successful at getting rid of police in their school districts, us being one of them. Another one was our comrades in Toronto. And now we're seeing a big push for defunding the police and moving those inflated and unnecessary funds for over policing and abuse to actually uplifting and building up the communities through various means, fulfilling those neglected resources that have constantly been fought for. And just wanted to put this out here that we actually just got a notification from WHAS saying that 2 student athletes in JCPS tested positive for coronavirus. And so, I mean, that's just right on par with what we're pushing. We do not need to be in schools because of this. And once we return to schools, there are some things that definitely need to be enforced, and that is not having armed officers of any kind in the schools. And this push has been a very long push, but really started in 2017 with Jeffersontown High School and the assault there at Jeffersontown High School by the police when they basically assaulted two young Black males and pointed tasers and stuff at students. And, you know, since then, nationally, there's just been a really big spotlight on all of these assaults, mainly geared towards Black and brown students. There is tons of data out there that proves that regardless of the infraction or the violation, white students are not consequenced and brutalized, nowhere near in comparison to the amount that Black and brown students are. And that forces, you know, the communities to feel like they aren't protected and to not really trust the school system. This definitely amplifies the school to prison pipeline, which is a thing and will continue to be a thing as long as we have officers in schools. And want to uplift the counselors not cops hashtag because that is a necessity. I am a mental health worker and have been my entire adult life. Just about going on 11 years. And I don't have, you know, we're not trained to have, you know, batons and tasers and all these things. We are trained how to de-escalate. We are trained how to notice the signs of trauma. You know, these are everyday life skills that can help any human that, you know, I utilize in more than, you know, just, you know, my job. But I, as I am not a JCPS employee and, you know, have been advocating for this along with other comrades for quite a while, and I'm not a student anymore, I do want to, you know, pass this on to some other folks who can speak more to that now. So I'm going to pass it to Savion.
Thank you. My name is Savion Briggs.
Actually, I'm sorry. Chantrice is next.
Oh,
Sorry, y'all.
sorry.
Hey, yeah, I'm gonna be super quick. I appreciate all the Black men on this call who just been like spitting knowledge, Kumar and M, like, and Savion when you get to yours. So I'm Chantrice. I direct Feed the West. I'm a JCPS graduate, manual class of 2003. And, you know, I went to King Elementary. I went to Breckenridge. I tested in like the little AP honors program, whatever it is. Had Miss Winstead learn Spanish, German, Russian. So, you know, hola, como estás, guten tag, and privyet, all that, right? But then fast forward, my son starts going to King. He's 7, he's in 1st grade, and he gets manhandled, you know what I'm saying? As a 7-year-old at that school by a grown man, right? Those children are always getting resource officers, so-called, called on them. You know what I'm saying? For minor infractions. My son got in trouble for reading a book in the corner quietly because the teacher wanted him to do it from his desk. You know what I'm saying? And that's the type of thing that our children are criminalized for. So for me, my son was scared to go to school. I pulled him out. And this is pre-corona. And so it is imperative that we have police-free schools. I'm definitely not sending my child back. I don't advocate that anybody send their child back. And then you got the added complication of corona, right? And it all indicates that they don't care about us. I have white friends who aren't on calls like this. They don't have to have these conversations. I have white friends who are confused as to why we have to have these conversations, right? Their children don't see police when they go to school or to the grocery store. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a health equity report, I think it's from 2017 from Metro, that's talking about the fact that us in the West End, mostly Black people, we live 10 years shorter than affluent people in like St. Matthews. And some of them, it's as big as a 15-year gap, right? Police terrorism has a lot to do with that. You can't tell me a child go to school every day and have somebody that could potentially lock them up, someone who's taken away their parents and their family, their loved ones, and you not be traumatized. This ain't no serve-friendly C type of police officer singing and dancing about not doing drugs. You know what I'm saying? For those of y'all who are old enough to remember Sir Friendly Sea, these are terrorists. These are armed individuals in schools and places where we're supposed to learn. So you can't tell me these kids ain't distracted and traumatized. So I'm all day up and down 24/7. No police in schools at all. We got other things to spend money on. We got other things we need to take care of. As M talked about, we got mental health issues, not just for Black children, but children, period, right? And we have a lot of things to spend it on. I don't know if y'all got the free lunches for your children during when the pandemic first happened. I picked them up for some families. One of the lunches, you know what the protein was? Sunflower seeds. I'm not joking. The protein for the free lunches was sunflower seeds. So clearly we don't got money to spend on police or resource officers or whatever they want to call them if we're feeding the children sunflower seeds and crackers for lunch. You have your kid at school 6, 7, 8 hours a day, depending on if they're in before and after care, and that's what they're spending money on, which shows they don't value us. They do not value our children. If they valued our children, they would put resources in there, not police, who are terrorists, who are the original slave catchers. And so the last thing I'm gonna say is that the pandemic is big, right? It's real. I know some people think it's a conspiracy, whatever. The pandemic is real. I'm not sending my child to be in harm's way. But more than that, after, like, even if there's a vaccine, there's a cure, whatever, police terror will still be a pandemic for Black people. And it is absolutely essential that we not only not send our children back, but get some of these white allies to also double down and be like, we also are not putting in our money. We also are not doing these things, right? As a homeowner here in the West End, my property value is much lower than my white counterparts with less square footage. My house is dope. Tamika Forms is my realtor. My house is dope. It's amazing. It's my bougie dream. But a worse house in a different part of town goes for way more. Right. And that's because we don't have a grocery store. That's because we have police just riding up and down the street. We got jacked up concrete, and it shows that they don't value us. So we're taking the steps necessary. You could call it revolutionary or radical if you want to, but we are taking the steps necessary to value our children, because clearly some won't. All right. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chantrese. It's, the very same thing that we are fighting on the streets is the very same thing that we are fighting in the schools, and the same hatred that snatched the future from Breonna Taylor and countless others. That's the same hatred that fuels the sabotage of education for Black, Brown, Indigenous, and working class children. These school systems that have refused to address the education inequity, they've earned our mistrust. You can earn somebody's trust. You can also earn their mistrust. They've earned our mistrust through their actions. So, you get to hear from yourself, from parents that are speaking on these things. Thank you again, Chantrese. Mike had also put in that there are around 9 million, it takes around $9 million to implement JCPS police. So think about all that money, and what if that money was reallocated to things that I've seen succeed in my classroom, restorative justice? What if every single school and every single teacher was trained with the International Institute of Restorative Justice to actually know how to work with, build relationships with, and talk to our children instead of calling an SRO or a police officer to come in and snatch that child out the classroom? So when we talk about how much money is implemented into JCPS, we need to rethink where that money could go to, where it would actually benefit our children. The same way we are discussing defunding the police in the communities. It doesn't mean completely take away that money and take away those resources, those people. It means reallocate those funds to the people and to our students. So. I'm gonna go ahead and share with what Chantrese discussed about when we talked about reopening for COVID. I'm gonna move on to the next slide. The demands are still here if we need, and then open up the floor to our next speaker. But this is something that the Demand Safe Schools has sent out about listening to Trump and reopening the schools. Nah, but listening to parents, students, and teachers and demanding safe schools, yeah, I think we can work on that. Demand Safe Schools is also sending a national letter to Trump, to Biden, and to every member of Congress that outlines our demands, the 8 demands that we discussed for reopening. Because the Trump administration announced new CDC guidelines on the reopening of schools, this was a clear political move to undermine the case against safe, healthy, and equitable reopening of schools. Mind you, they've also thrown out that the rush to put a bunch of teachers, to force teachers and students back into the classroom, that is a way to use them as guinea pigs. And that's something that, was discussed when we, were organizing, that what they're going to do is try to use our educators and our students that lack in the proper resources for a safe reopening. They want to use them as guinea pigs for the coronavirus. So we can't let that happen because they're not physically ready to reopen yet. So I'll put the slides back up. I'm sorry, the demands back up, and then open up the floor to our next speaker. Savion, did you want to go ahead and say
Yeah.
something? Okay. You can introduce yourself and.
Okay. Well, hey, my name is Savion Briggs. I'm a 2020 graduate from Butler Traditional High School, and a freshman at Kentucky State this year. And I'm going to just talk about the point number 2, police-free schools. And as we look at it, if you have the JCPS have enough money to put police officers in schools, that should be a problem in itself. Because if you think about it, they're going past everything that they want to do. If we look at it, police officers in schools is not a good thing at all. At all. If you resource officers in schools, it poses a threat to people Black and brown students that look like me every day. Because if we see it outside in our community all the time, like we see police when we go to the store, we see police when we at football practice, we see police on our way to school, we see police everywhere. And it's not always a good effect. When I see a police, I don't feel warm. I don't feel safe. When I see police, I see a threat. And to put that in the schools where I'm supposed to be going to school to get education is a problem. And the fact that y'all have the money to do that is a problem too, because there's no reason why I should be going to a school with old books, old computers, and we live in a time where technology is everything. And I'm going to school where we don't have that much technology. We have old books, or we still learning the same history, not updating our history books is a problem. And the fact that y'all have money to put police us in schools and not actually help us and educate us, y'all seeing the problem. And it's not, and me being a student and me being a big brother at the same time, I do not want my little brothers and sisters to go to a school system where it's set up like that at all. And just to think of the mental health on the side of putting the students in the school with police officers is a problem. 1.7 million students have police in schools instead of counselors. I'm gonna say it one more time because I need that to sink in, just to understand, coming from the parents' point of view, the students' point of view. 1.7 million students have police officers in schools instead of counselors. So at this point, y'all saying to us that we don't matter. You want to police us instead of actually sitting down with us, talking to us, and seeing what's wrong. Why police us instead of understand what's going on in our mental? Our mental is very important. Our mental is always something going on with a person's mental, and a simple conversation can change a person's life. Instead of putting officers with guns in schools where we're supposed to be learning, which already show, if you think back into October 2015, when 18-year-old Naya Kinney was flipped and dragged across her room out of her desk. So you see what happens when you put police officers in school. You know what's going to happen if you continue to put police officers in school. So why do you do it? How many Black 18-year-old queens have to be dragged in the classroom for them to understand that we do not need police officers in the classroom? What threat is student posing with a book or a backpack, especially Black minority students? We just want to go to school to get education. And we learning in an educational system that's not even teaching us good things. We're learning about us as we're slaves, where we was not just slaves. We was kings and queens. And that's the problem. Where you add police officers in the school is not helping that at all. And then it's this adultification thing that y'all posing on us. Why do we see police officers in school, in elementary schools and middle schools? What threat is those children posing? Is the question that I ask. What threat does a 7-year-old boy or girl pose to a school? They might talk back. They might run in a hallway. They're not gonna take a gun to school. What 7-year-old is gonna pick up a gun and shoot up a school? It's not gonna happen. When you police us and you put police officers in these environments, or school resource officers, if you want to call it, in this environment, you're waiting for something to happen. You're wanting something to happen. When you go out into these white neighborhoods, you don't see a lot of police officers. Why? Because a lot of crime's not going to happen. But if you come down in the West End, East End of Louisville, you see a lot of police officers because they're put in place for things to happen. You won't see police officers in places unless you know something's going to happen. It's criminalization of the Black youth. 70% of the arrests was from 70% of the arrests that was had students getting arrested in school was for misdemeanors. So you telling me if I go to school and I talk back to a teacher because maybe one day it's a lot going on at home and I'm on the edge. I'm on edge. Instead of talking to me, you want to put me in handcuffs for expressing my feelings. Expressing my feelings in school, where they're supposed to be a safe place with teachers, and now police officers. What is that helping? Is the question I ask. It's not helping anything at all. You literally just help adding on to the school to prison pipeline. It's police officers already in our neighborhood that have broken our houses, that took main figures away from us in our family. So the connection with police officers is bad all the way, and you want to place them in our schools. Where am I safe? If I'm not safe in schools, I'm not safe in my neighborhood. Where am I safe? You don't want to add counselors, so maybe something's going on. Maybe I just need to talk to someone. Open up that door for me to talk to someone instead of open up my prison cell. Open up the door to the counselor's office instead of sending me straight to the school to prison pipeline. This whole thing is bigger than what they're looking at. A police officer is not just here to protect. They're not even protecting us outside of school. So how can they protect us in school? We are living, and I live every day with a system that look at my Black skin as a criminal first and a citizen second. So you putting them in school, how is that benefiting me? It's not. Because if you want to benefit me, if you want to benefit us, if you want to benefit the Black and brown minority, how about better the schools? How about adding criteria? How about learning about activists and doctors and educators that look like me? So I know I can be something bigger than a football player, or knowing that I'm a descendant from kings and queens instead of just a descendant from slaves. You don't want to see us grow because y'all throwing a problem into a system that's already filled up with problems. Why is our history books old and y'all trying to put police officers in our schools? So let's take away the money that y'all want to put police officers in school and put it to better things, books, computers. It should not be 2020. Everything is on an app and everything's on an iPhone, and I'm reading my history from 100-year-old book with ripped pages, with people that don't look like me. People make history every day. Every day. Every day we live is history. It's no reason why I should go into class and I'm thinking about history and I'm thinking about slavery, I'm thinking about segregation, I'm thinking about all these things, and I think that it's 100 years ago. It's because the lack of resources in the schools make the book seem so old. So we think history is so long ago when really it was just 30 years ago. That's why you see constantly on the street in our environment, history's repeating itself because we not understand what we actually went through. It's going to continue to repeat itself because don't have the education and the lack of knowledge to actually make the change. If you really want to talk about Black African American history, we can. And I bet you when we wouldn't be going through the things that we went through back then. We wouldn't. It's the lack of education. And it's a problem. It is a problem. And do y'all want to fix it? Because if y'all put money into police officers and not actually bettering our education, that's a problem within itself. So who are y'all actually doing it for? Who are y'all actually putting police officers in the school for? Because it's not for my safety. It's not for my teacher's safety, which we have teachers out here protesting to defund the police. So who are you actually protecting? Who are you doing this for? If the students don't want it, the teachers don't want it, you putting police officers in school and not counselors. So who are you actually doing it for? Because who is it benefiting? It's not benefiting us. They want to control everything we do. It should not be police officers in places where we get education. How can I focus if it's a man with a gun walking and pasting around my classroom? What if I walk to the bathroom and he feel like my skin color is a threat, just like he do out on the street? Like, then my life is taken in school. And then that's another conversation we're going to have to have. I should not be scared to go to school. That is a problem. That should be a safe place. If everything that's going on at home, if it's not right, I should look forward to going to school. I shouldn't dread going to school. I shouldn't have to get on a bus and feel like I'm on my way to a prison. I shouldn't have to get off, walking in a line like my hands is in handcuffs, and then going to sit in a class for like 7 hours a day with a person with a gun walking around and feeling like he has the authority to drag me across the classroom. This was in 2015 now, so we already know what's going to happen if we continue to put police officers in school. So this is in 2015. She was dragged across the classroom, and they have it on videotape. She didn't have a weapon, so you dragged an 18-year-old young queen across the classroom for what? Being a kid, having a bad day, having mixed emotions. Like these is all natural things that we go through as kids. And if you're stripping away our childhood by putting police officers in everywhere we go. How can I be a kid? How can kids get attitudes? Do they not? I'm pretty sure it's a lot of parents that's listening to this, and it's a lot of you've been around kids. That's all you have to be around kids to understand. Kids is going to be kids, right? And kids is going to be kids. So why are you trying to strip away our childhood? That's all we want to do. We just want to go to school, learn education, get some education, I mean, but actual history that's about people like me so we can better ourselves and we can have pride behind our skin color and pride behind who we are. And then you can start seeing change. But y'all not about to keep crippling us and continue to cripple us with putting police officers in this system. So we want police-free schools, especially during the pandemic, because that don't help at all. We want police-free schools. We will get police-free schools because I know I will not go to school if it's a police officer in my high school, which I'm in college now, so I would not let my brothers and sisters go to school if there's police officers in high school. And that's the mentality that everyone has to have. I will not send my son or daughter to school if they're not safe. Y'all don't want to help the community, so now y'all trying to mess up our school system too, which is already messed up. So if we get everyone to say, I will not send my children to school with police officers in school, we have that second demand. So it's up to us, the people, to show them that we're not playing no games. We will not send our children to unsafe environments again, and we will not do that. And that's all I have to say.
Savion, I just want to say that, you have really, really, you've done a great job at reiterating everything that we have been asking for, everything that we have been demanding. And Best believe, I don't know if you've ever heard Bob Marley say this, but Bob Marley told us, listen to the children. And we hear you, we're listening, and that's why we continue to fight for you. And know that there are several teachers that are behind you. There are several teachers that are behind this movement. We have been trying to make our voices heard too, and know that we will continue to, fight for this and fight for police-free schools and fight so that you do feel safe, so that when you do have children, your children feel safe going to school. Um, when you were talking, you brought to mind some videos that I had seen circulating on social media. There was a little boy, he's out, he's hooping, playing basketball in his driveway, and, a cop car, he's just minding his own business. A cop car rides down the street, and he hurries up and, runs to stand behind his parents' Jeep, the truck, to shield himself, because he was afraid. And, he waits until the cop car passes until he comes back out and continues hooping. I mean, when you were talking, I thought about that. Like, if you can't feel safe in your own neighborhood, if you can't feel safe in your own schools, then where can you feel safe at? So thank you so much. You had me shedding some tears here there because, I think about not only your testimonial, but there's several students that have communicated the same thing that you've communicated with us, that we don't feel safe. There's several students that have asked, Miss Bird, can I come to your classroom? Because I don't feel safe in this, situation or in this environment. And a lot of that comes from, teachers, educators, assistants, and even the SROs that were in school. Everything starts with building relationships. And if we're not building relationships with our students, with our communities, and just, instead just thinking we're here for a power struggle and to tell people what to do and to be an authoritarian figure, if that's the mindset of the people that we have in our buildings, then we've got it all wrong. We've had babies that are traumatized. Someone just mentioned in the chat, babies are traumatized, and it feels like a war zone to our babies. So that can't happen. That can't continue. We can't continue to have children that are afraid of the police. We can't continue to have children that are afraid of SROs. So whew, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much. And, I believe that we will win.
And I just want to add a little tidbit there. Something I was thinking about is like, we've had all these protests happen since late May, is that a lot of these protests, all of them actually include the youth, include kids, the police brutality videos, the videos that we've seen here of the young lady getting basically like suplexed, like a wrestling move outside, as there were, white supremacists who were shooting things at protesters, but the cops never confronted them. The cops numerous times on, countless live feeds that you can look up where the cops are attacking and brutalizing peaceful protests, or trying to do things to disrupt them. And the point I want to make is that the kids see this and they're internalizing and processing that as, hey, these people are not safe. They do not breed safety, and to have to go back into school potentially within the next, several weeks, to have to go see that is causing more trauma. It's re-traumatizing. It is, and all it does is just basically say, we don't really care about how you feel. We're not going to provide you with, enough counselors so that they don't have, 100 some kids on a caseload to where they can't even see the kids who really need it. We're not going to give you nurses, we're not going to give you that, but we'll give you cops. We'll give you cops so that when you step out of line or when you're having an issue with your behavior that's rooted to your trauma, we'll just kick you out. That's all that's saying. So the kids, they see, like they see this, the kids are becoming more tech savvy, the youth. So like they know what's going on. They've seen all these, protests from the Breonna Taylor murder and the George Floyd murder and, you know, all the other things, even the ones in between before and after, the youth will see it and they take that with them to school. And so to have to endure through that and then to see a cop when you're literally seeing it in real time, in real life, right in your neighborhood, in your downtown, you're seeing, or you're even around people who have been brutalized over the last month or so, just from peacefully protesting. You're not going to want to be in school. It's going to make you feel unsafe. And, you know, how do people respond when they don't feel safe? Let's think about that.
I just want to continue to amplify that you can find more resources, and there is an exhaustive list of research as to you know, how police are not effective in schools, and the majority of the SROs in schools, they are not handling, they're not trained to handle our students effectively. So make sure that even when we get off this call, you continue to visit demandsafeschools.org to find more resources and the research that they have done, and they'll continuously update that information as well. There's also a very, very helpful toolkit on defunding the police, which also addresses defunding the police in our schools at demandsafeschools.org. When you go on the page, just go up to the resources tab in the top right-hand corner of the page. So that being said, let me throw these demands back up there and then see who else. Do I have any other speakers that are that would like to speak on some of the demands? Savion, you want to say something? Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I just want to end on just telling this story about my little brother that just happened about a week ago. I went over my father's house and I've been protesting and stuff for the past few weeks, and my little brothers have seen me. They have been to protests and everything, and then he asked me. He was like, "Why did the police officer kill Breonna Taylor?" And I just looked at him because he's 8 years old, and I kind of hesitated to see what I was going to say, because I had to take in consideration he's still a kid. Do I need to beat around the bush and kind of sugarcoat it, or do I be straightforward to him and tell him exactly what happened? Because he's been forced into this way of living in this society, whether he like it or not. And I just sat there and I was just staring at him because I was honestly lost for words. Because I really want to tell him all about our history, tell him about how they see our skin color as a threat. But then again, I want him to be a kid. I don't want him to have to wake up at such a young age. I want him to just worry about running outside, catching lightning bugs, not running outside head on a swivel because police might ride past and he might look like he have a gun in the middle of the park to Rice. But and I didn't give him an answer. I told him I'm gonna get back to him, because me being 18, me being a big brother, I still do not know how to answer that question. I know why. Y'all know why, but I don't know if he's ready to know why. That's what was it.
I do want to say one last thing too before Shantae or y'all have anything else, or anybody that's on here. Something that we need to remember as we move through these moments in this movement, that this movement is unapologetically Black, and anything that we're speaking for amongst Black liberation, which is the self-determination of Black folks, the autonomy of Black folks, and identity theologies and searching for Black folks is unapologetic. So we owe no one an explanation of to why it is that we're doing what we need to do, because we get to have that opportunity to do that. And we are moving that work for us. And so this is the work that is necessary for future generations and work that has been brought onto us by our ancestors. So whenever we feel the need to move, whenever it sits there for you and it begins to rise up and bubble out, make sure you get that a system that does not want to see the self-determination and autonomy of Black people, especially around education. And that education may lead us to freedom, especially if it's done so in a way that we determine. So know that is the exact reason why lots of people, including this administration and some of our administrations that are local, want to keep Black folks and these narratives that we presented today from being commonplace. It's going to make people uncomfortable. And that's exactly how this work has to move. Thank you all for being on so much. I loved it so much. Let me give it back to y'all.
Thank you, Chanel. Okay, so if I can just go through, there is a petition that I want to address. Before I do that, does anybody else have anything that they want to share or put out there? Okay. All right, so there's a petition against Trump using excessive force to reopen schools. And again, that is one of our demands. Parents, communities, and teachers. Right now, the ball is in our court more than it's ever been before. So we need to make sure that we use this momentum to make our voices heard. And the hashtag equity or else, that's the hashtag that a lot of communities have been using. The hashtag ed equity or else is for education equity or else in regards to our schools and the demands to resist and refuse to reopen unless the data says that it's safe to do so. So make sure that you go to the demandsafeschools.org. You can also find this petition on change.org, and you can get some more background information on the petition. Just go ahead, go out there, sign your name, because you also know that we have Betsy DeVos, who we have been battling, who we have been fighting against, and some of the outrageous comments that she has thrown out there in regards to reopening schools, in regards to forcing students and educators to go back to schools when it's not safe to do so. She's also a big part, she has a big part in, refusing to reallocate funds from from private education to public education, vice versa. That was something that we were fighting at the Capitol last year, them trying to take money from public education to, to fulfill their private education agenda and the charter school vouchers and all that. So when you go to change.org, make sure you look for this petition because it has some of our demands on here. We are, again, the letter that's going out to Congress, to every member in Congress, is going to Trump and Biden as well, to fight against them using excessive force to reopen. So demandsafeschools.org and change.org is where you can find these petitions and go and sign and put your name on there. Sorry, having some technical difficulties. Last but not least, there is a Facebook page. You can join the Demand Safe Schools Facebook page. When you go, you do have to answer a few questions when you request to join. I'll pull that up for you so you can see as well.
But this is not just this National Day of Resistance. This is just a day to get the word out, to, express to our communities and to our lawmakers, to everyone in White House, why we are resisting. Today is just a day to get the word out and to express what our demands are. But this whole movement, this movement is, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work that needs to be done, and we want to make sure that everyone continues to stay in the loop, that everyone continues to stay informed, and everyone's updated as well, because there's a lot of things happening, changes happening everywhere day by day. So we want to make sure that everyone stays in the loop. So go ahead and request to join the Demand Safe Schools private group, and make sure you sign the petition as well. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's all I have. Unless we have anyone else that wants to, share anything. If we have any questions that you can drop in the chat, we could take a minute to see if anyone else. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. There were a couple of one demand that we didn't speak on, the equitable access to online learning. When we talk about refusal to reopen until it's safe, we also need to make sure that we're addressing the equitable access to online learning, because a lot of the students, we know that COVID came, just out the blue. We didn't know, how to prepare for it. Teachers were only given like maybe a couple weeks notice, if even that, to prepare. And that's something that also needs to be addressed. A lot of parents are going into this school year, they're afraid, they're worried, they have a lot of concerns. How am I going to hold down a full-time job while also homeschool my child? Or how do I find someone to come and, help my child with their lessons if I'm not home? So,
And let me jump in real quick, Shantae.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was. I'm glad you said that, because that's another reason why we need more of this money, because we got, they're talking about a Louisville family. I think I can't remember what part of it might have been East Africa they were from. It had a lot of members in their family, 9 kids specifically, I believe. But out of them 9 kids, they only had 1 Chromebook. And then they're talking about now they're gonna try to get them 2 Chromebooks. How are 9 kids gonna use 2 Chromebooks? Every kid should have access to that technology. Every kid should have a Chromebook. Every kid should have either access to a hotspot or Wi-Fi provided for them. That's just part of equity. Yeah, in North Carolina, they're just a group out there that's proposing that they take their federal funding and spend it for that purpose. We need to do a better job of that here. So there's no way that we can operate on the same budget. We need far more things than we've had, and absolutely every kid needs access, because that's going to be the key right there to maintaining Black and brown students being the permanent underclass, because you can't go to school at all. At least if you're in the back of the class and you ain't really listening or something, you getting a little bit of something perhaps, but now you're getting absolutely nothing if you don't have that money to have that digital access.
Absolutely. And then, when we think about, people that have been evicted or that are going to be evicted, how are they going to find their addresses to make sure that those students have Chromebooks? How do we, make sure that we are, again, forcing this moratorium on evictions and foreclosures so that people are not left unhoused this upcoming school year? So, yeah, we've got a lot of work to do. Someone just dropped in the chat that corporations have public ed in an infinite chokehold, and that's something that absolutely has to end. So I want to thank everyone that joined this, especially considering that this was, this wasn't our initial plans, that we actually had it plan to be out at the Board of Education rallying, but just know that this is just the beginning, of getting that word out there, getting those demands out there. They'll see us, and they will hear from us. So make sure you continue to stay tuned, stay in the loop. Go to demandsafeschools.org, go to the Demand Safe Schools Facebook page,
And we also have this wealth of information and awesome testimonials and from everyone. So thank you all for joining, and we'll be in touch. Mhm. All right, I think that's it.